So let's talk about some things. I want to share an experience because there's a lot that goes on in these offices, these corporate settings and departments that are the same across the board, and a lot of people deal with the same core issues to a different degree. And let's I'm gonna tell a story. So let's gather around for stories here. So there was a time in my career where I was working in a job and I was the youngest person and the least tenured person in this department. And when I say least tenured, I mean my colleagues, and shout out to them, they were some amazing people. My colleagues had 7, 10, 15, over 20 years of experience in some cases. And they had been at this company, in this department, and seen so many evolutions, changes, transformations, and they could probably perform every job in that department in their sleep. And here I am with my 13 months having been at the job that I really enjoyed. And so there was a role that came open, and I immediately knew that a lot of my long term colleagues would be applying for this job, internal job. But guess who also applied? Me. I sure did. I also applied. And the reason I did that was number one, just because I had the fucking audacity to do it, regardless of what my competition was bringing to the table. The second reason I applied is because I looked at the job description and I looked at what this role entails, the things I would be doing on a day to day basis, what the requirements were in terms of experience, in terms of credentials, all of that, right? And I met most of those criteria. So when it came to reading the job description and looking at what my responsibilities would be, I was willing to do those things. And the things that I didn't know how to do, I was willing to learn those things. So the job was attractive to me because there's an opportunity for me to show what I'm already capable of doing. But there's also opportunities for me to learn new things and to be challenged in different ways. So it was not going to be a regurgitation of my current job, which when you stay in a job for too long and you know how to do all the things, and now you're just coming in a robotic way and you just know which buttons to push and when to push them and what to send to what person and when, and if something goes wrong you know how to work the exceptions, and again you can probably do this job in your sleep. That's when it's time to move on, and really you should be moving on from a job before you even get to that point. When you feel like I have learned some things in this job, I have created and accomplished some things, I have improved some things, I have automated some things, then it's time to move on. And so for me, I was looking ahead to that. And I had met most of the requirements, but I was willing to do the job. So the way, the protocol at my company when you apply for an internal job is you have to notify your manager that you're applying for the job. And I did that. And the hiring manager, I knew her on a basis as far as we would say hi and bye, good morning. cute shoes, whatever. I had been in a couple of meetings with her. So she knew about me. And for me, going into this interview, knowing who I was up against as far as my competition, I didn't know exactly who had applied for the role, but I had an idea of who had applied for the role. And these are even people who are currently working for the person who's hiring for the job. So you could say there were some odds stacked against me, but the bigger takeaway is that I'm I'm still applying for the job. I don't care what the odds look like. So fast forward, I applied to the job. I'm called for an interview, and as I was preparing for my interview, I went through even deeper, looking at the job description, looking at my resume, looking at how I can align the two, and putting together 3 to 5 examples of, I knew there were going to be some tell me about a time questions, or how do you handle this, this, and this. And so I wanted to have 3 to 5 most impactful things that I've done throughout my career to articulate my fit for this role. And I started with my current job because this new job was going to be somewhat related to what I was doing. So I wanted to make the correlation to my current role and how it progresses into this new role. But then I also went back to some other experiences that I had in other jobs. And so I had my own interview notes that I prepared, but I also produced this 1-pager, a career walk that I gave to the hiring manager during the interview. So we get in the conference room, we sit down, we do, hey, how are you, pleasantries, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, before we get started, I would like to share this with you. And I know that we've known each other and been in some meetings, but I wanted to give you some deeper context into my experience. And she appreciated that. And she was highly impressed with it. The interview went well, and I didn't get the job. I did not get the job. She told me I didn't get the job, but here's what I did get. She booked some time with me after she went through all the interviews, after she made her decision, probably in the same conference room where we did the interview, if I'm not mistaken. She told me, she said, I chose someone else for the role. And she said, but I just wanted to talk to you for a minute because you presented very well in the interview. You did a fantastic job. And I was really impressed with the 1-pager that you shared with me, because now I know more about you and what you do, and you're going to go very far in your career. And it was a very enlightening conversation, but it was also a confirmatory conversation of what I had already known about myself. So there's so many things I want to say that you can take away from just that conversation. And so one of the takeaways is always go for what you want, regardless of how it looks, regardless of the odds and the barriers that might be looking you dead in your face. Go for it anyway. The second one is make sure that you are standing out and not blending in, because I could have very well gone into this interview, just sat down, went through the interview process like everybody else did, and I am 99.9% sure that I'm the only person that produced this 1-pager for her to sell my experience. And so, number 3, we don't always have to be so laser focused on the outcome that we miss the learnings, the process, and what you gain from the experience itself. Because I took that 1-pager and I was able to use it in other areas. So fast forward a couple of years, quick tangent. Fast forward a couple of years when I applied for another job that I had zero technical experience in, and I still got hired. We'll come back to that conversation in a minute because that's important to what we're talking about. But I want you to understand those three things when it comes to your career. You are the driver. It is not going to serve you to say, I want this job, but I might be out of my league. Or I really want this job, but I know that the people that are also going for this job have more experience. So what? I did not get that job. But what I got, the feedback that I got from that hiring manager was it was gas. It was gasoline that was poured on a fire that was already burning inside of me as far as my ambition. And so the other part of this, which is why I said we'll get back to the other job I applied for, the other part of this is that the hiring manager went back to my manager and shared the same feedback. She said, Nicole applied for my role. She did very well in the interview. I was really impressed with her. And she shared this one pager with me that, really kind of blew me away, sort of thing. And I know this because my manager came back and told me. She popped into my cube one day. These are the days of the accounting cubicles. She popped into my cube, said she got some excellent feedback about me, and she told me what the hiring manager had said. And then she also told me about this one pager that you gave her that she was really impressed with. And I said, yeah, I created that just to let her know more about my experience and what I do. Her reaction was, can you share that with me? Because I'd like to take a look at it. My answer to her question was no. And she had a crazy look on her face. And I said, this is something that I created for me to stand out in the interview. So this is essentially my IP, my intellectual property, that she's asking for because she was intending to take my one pager and copy it to make her own one pager so that she can use it in her interviews because I don't know if she knew if I knew or not, but she had been interviewing internally and externally at the company. And so I said no. And she said, girl, I just want to take I said, and that's what I told her. This is something I created for me as my competitive advantage. And this is outside of my job. So I don't want to share that with you. And she said okay out of her mouth, but her behaviors after that told me everything I needed to know. So this is somebody who used to want to walk across the street to Starbucks together and go to lunch and spend 35 minutes in my cube in the morning complaining about her commute and her ex-husband and all these other things, right? Or just the stuff that we had to get done for work. And so now those conversations, now she doesn't want to go to lunch. She doesn't want to go to Starbucks. She is emailing me all the time instead of coming over. And I was just like, how small of you to be a people manager, and this is how you react when you're told no about me sharing something with you, my refusal to share something with you that I created for myself that you now want to impersonate and use for your own benefit. So the change in her behavior didn't faze me because there was nothing that you could say about my work, about how I showed up to work, my communication. There was nothing else that you could say about my job. But because I'm choosing not to share my creation with you, now you got attitude with me? Now it's becoming personal? And so it made me laugh, actually. It made me laugh. And it also made me triple check things instead of double checking things because I was not about to give her any reason or any satisfaction to say something about my work. So I am glad to share the one pager. If you want to copy it and you want to use it for your own career development and to stand out in job interviews, you are more than welcome to do that. And I'm thinking back because you go through things at work and what I was growing up during that season. I was growing up professionally during that season. And I look back, I thought back to this scenario years ago and I said, what, if anything, would I have changed about my role in that scenario? Would I have done anything differently? And my immediate response to myself was no, I would not have done anything differently. And that's just what that is. I mean, if you want to get ahead in your career, then you figure out what works for you, right? And I'm already looking at this with Papa Pope's eyes that we have to be twice as good to get half of what they got. So here I am, a Black female working in corporate America in a predominantly white space that wasn't even designed for me to be here. And I'm doing this, put it in that twice as good category. And now you want that too? No, I'm not. So there's nothing I would change about that at all. And one more tangent and we'll move on. But or I'll move on, I should say. But one thing that tickled me a couple years after that, which confirmed for me that I made the right decision, is I was invited to an awards gala and a fundraiser for an organization that I support. And I wound up at a table with some very nice ladies and that I didn't know. So we sparked up conversations and just talking about what we support, what we do, where we work, things like that. And I told somebody where I worked, and they asked me, this is a couple years later, mind you, I had moved on to a different department. I believe this person had moved on she had moved on outside the company. And I told this person where I worked, and she asked me if I knew the person that was my old manager. So basically, the person who tried to give me hell about not sharing my intellectual property with her left the company. I was told she was fired, but I don't know how true that is because I don't have not credible sources, but it was more of those telephone game type of communication. So I don't know if that's the case of what happened, but she was no longer at the company. She went to another company, and it just so happens that the person that I'm sitting at the table with is now her coworker. And when she asked me, did I know her, I almost hit the floor to say, before I say anything, how do you know her? And she went into details of how she and I had similar conversations, similar experiences with this person. So she's like, oh my gosh, she is just like a basket. She was just saying things that tracked with how I experienced this person. And so the whole time she's talking, I am laughing Um, and I'm telling her, I am laughing because this sounds just like her. I do know her. In fact, she was my manager. And so now we're trading these war stories. And the takeaway from that is don't forget about how small circles really are. Don't forget about how small industries really are. The world is big, the ocean is vast, but people know people who know people who know people. And so just keep that in mind when you go about your career. I recognize there are things that happen that will just make you want to cuss everybody out and be on your Tupac hit 'em up energy. I get it. But I want you to be mindful of, you know, the phrase that says the toes that you're stepping on today could be attached to the ass that you kiss tomorrow. So don't burn any bridges. Even if you do want to go off on somebody and pop off, it's that those 15 seconds are not worth the potential ramifications to your brand and to your career. So I'm saying all that because again, I know that there is somebody who has gone through something similar to where you feel like your manager has a personal vendetta against you. And a lot of times it can feel that way, but it's really not about you. Sometimes managers have so much going on that they don't know which way is up, and they can be getting pressure from their manager and their skip level, and things aren't always communicated, delivered, or taken in the right context. And that is not to take any accountability away from the manager, because if you're a people manager, you need to understand how to manage people. And companies will put people in roles yet still not prepare them or groom them to manage people. They will put a individual contributor in a manager role and say congratulations, but then the next day now you're a manager and you don't know what to do. You don't know how to start. You don't even know how to connect with your team. And so that's another thing that people have been reaching out to me about in coaching sessions is like, I need some guidance on how to be a manager. I mean, I'm glad to have the job and I'm excited to have the promotion, but how am I supposed to do this? So you're in this role, yay, wave the pom poms, but you don't know how to perform well in the role, and the company has not thrown you a bone. And so now you're starting to wonder, am I being set up to fail here? But instead, take that half empty glass and make it half full, and go back to your manager to say, I'm excited about this role and I'm looking forward to adding value in this capacity, but I need help. I found a leadership development class that I would like to attend. Tell your manager what you need to be successful. They may not always know, or it might not be top of mind for them, or they may be expecting you to figure it out. But don't leave that part to chance. Go to your manager and tell them, these are my priorities as a new manager. This is what I want to do, but I also need your support in getting X, Y, and Z. So there is, I feel like I can talk about this all day, but we're at the 25-minute mark, and I like to stay at least under 30 minutes for these conversations because I like for you to do what you need to do throughout the day, and I appreciate you pausing to hear me and take something away from this. But I recognize we all got stuff to do, and I want you to get it done, and I want you to get it done with all the audacity and all the excellence in the world. So we will certainly keep these conversations going. I will share the link to download the one pager if it's something that you want to use. And also, if you have a similar situation that you're dealing with, or you just need to talk through where you are in your career relative to where you want to be and how we can close the gap to get there. So, thank you all for listening to Career Convos. Do visit Career Convos on Substack, where you can get a ton of downloadable resources that you can use right now at work, and questions to a lot of the answers that corporate employees have on their mind, but they just don't know where to go. So, Career Convos on Substack is designed to be a go-to portal, a hub for people to say, I need career advice. I need an answer to this question. I need to start having conversations with my manager, but I don't know how to do it. I'm ready to go and ask for a raise because I've been doing all this extra work and I'm not being compensated for it. So all of those things. How do I deal with these microaggressions? How do I make sure my manager knows what I'm doing? And better yet, how do I make time for myself and my wellness and not be consumed by my job? So lots of conversations going on Career Convos on Substack, a ton of resources that you can download and use. And of course, you have access to the coaching calendar where you can book a coaching session with me or join one of the programs. So thank y'all for listening. If you have specific questions that you want me to answer, you're welcome to email me, Nikki, Nikki, at nickwinston.cpa.com. And I'll be in touch. Y'all be good.